Hello, hello. Good evening. Welcome to your Wellness Wednesday Live with me, your host, Fallon Lopez, registered nurse, certified health and wellness coach, and lover and supporter of all things health and prevent burnout. So, excuse me, I froze up a little bit. But tonight, I get the opportunity to speak to a wonderful lady, a good friend of mine. She's become a good friend of mine. We met about last year talking a lot about sugar-free, gut brain health. She's taught me so much, and I'm bringing her back on for another episode. This is episode 2 with Cheryl Prince. She is a holistic nutritionist, wellness advocate. She also says she's a wellness warrior. Y'all, I love speaking to this lady. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she's a retired nurse, so she knows her stuff. She is definitely an advocate for all things wellness. So please welcome Cheryl to tonight's Wellness Wednesday. How are you, friend?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Fallon. Yeah, it's, knowing that we're out there doing and educating people, the most important people, in my opinion, nurses, who are then going to educate more people. I so appreciate you bringing me on again.
Yes, we loved having you. You have the same passion, like you said, like when the nurses are, doing the things, are living, walking the walk, talking the talk, we can then reach the multitudes. And yeah, I love it. I love how passionate you are. So, Cheryl, you and we got together last year. We did an amazing masterclass. For those of y'all who have not checked out my masterclass, it's in the Nurse Wellness Community. That's my private Facebook group. You can go check out that replay. It's on Facebook, the Nurse Wellness Community. Cheryl and I did a masterclass on sugar-free. She brought this to my attention. She graces with her knowledge. We talked a lot about gut-brain connection and the effects that sugar has on that the gut brain axis. A lot of us go into thinking going sugar free or being sugar free is just about no candies, no cookies, all of the pastries, right, Cheryl? But I want to build from that. There are other sugars or other forms of sugars that start off as maybe innocent, just hobbies that we do on a sometime, weekends and things like that, that turn into habits. So I'd love for you to talk more about what are some of those perceived innocent hobbies that turn into habits, maybe that you've seen in your own life or maybe in the work that you've seen with others.
It's a funny one, because we do, you nailed it. We look at candy, we look at pop, we look at sweets and cookies and things like that as our sugars. And those are foods that we tend to be educated on a little bit greater. But one of my passions is the sugar that goes along in alcohol, because that is something that we can have in our body that doesn't show up the same way, but it could be more toxic sugar for us. So, it became kind of my passion that way. But another sugar that people are unaware about is even juice, having excess amount of juice. And that's a really hard sugar on the pancreas. So I look at sugars on how they affect other organs, not just the gut brain and, connection there. Yeah.
That's really good. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Like, we think that we've been talking mainly about gut brain connection, but like you said, these sugars, alcohol, juice, we may even go into a little bit of that. Like, what's the difference between 100% juice and maybe like which one's better, right? 100% juice, isn't that supposed to be better for you? What is your take on that? I just want to hear a little bit about it.
My take on it is zero juice. Zero juice.
And but it's 100% from the fruit.
Exactly. If it had all the pulp, the fiber that goes along with it, because otherwise it's a very quick sugar that gets into our bloodstream that spikes the pancreas's need to put out more insulin. And that's why it becomes a situation where if you give yourself too much juice, even thinking you're doing the healthy one, the pancreas is going into overdrive, and then starting to set you up for a condition called hypoglycemia, where you go way up and then drop really quickly. So it's a quick sugar fix, but it's not something that we should be taking in on a regular basis. And it's, especially our young children, we think it's there. Water is the drink of choice during the day, or maybe even in the evening.
So what would you say to somebody that's like, okay, I want to get off of saying, they're hearing you remind them, hey, juice is like this, like power shot to our pancreas. What are some ways that maybe you can like kind of wean off, like that have helped or that you've used with your?
Okay, so for sure, we watered down our juice and we made it thinner so that there was less sugar in it and it was more water based. And that's how we got our kids into it. And I did go with a concentrated juice and not a cocktail, so that, the cocktail is primarily sugar water already, whereas a concentrated juice is the juice of the plant, of the fruit itself. So there's a difference there. And then I watered it down. And then for myself, I would add club soda or tonic water, something with 0 calories, and make it almost like a pop, a soda, a sparkling drink, and use that. And I got into drinking that as a substitute for alcohol as well when I was pregnant in my younger days.
Because of the fizziness. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like to give applicable tips because, when we tell people like, hey, watch this, work on this, what to do. I love to also pair it with what applicable tips work for you. So I'm so glad that you brought in, let's water it down. We don't have to go cold turkey. Yes, we know that the juice is like a power shot to the pancreas, which can cause problems. Like you said, the hypoglycemia, that happens after your blood sugar spikes so hard or so high. So I'm really glad that you mixed in there, add the sparkling soda. I do that sometimes. That's great. Yeah.
My mom said that she could always determine. I come in Canada, we have, and I hate to say this, but there's quite a culture around alcohol usage. And that's where I started talking to people about, when it's a habit or when it's a hobby, because, it's very embedded into our lifestyle. But my mom used to always say to me, I could always tell when you were pregnant because you would switch to club soda and orange juice or club soda and cranberry juice when we'd go to a pub and have lunch. I was like, oh, Cheryl must be pregnant now. Because I was from alcohol, right? So
first you would be out in public, right? Like we socialize. Even here in the US, that is a socializing thing. Like whenever you go out, it's like, what are we drinking? Let's go out for drinks. How do we, meet up with friends? That's just the norm. And so when somebody doesn't order alcohols, what's going on with you? Are you pregnant? What's going on? So that's funny that you would bring it up. So yeah, I think
I do. I just want to throw one more thing out there.
Yeah.
People automatically assume if you're female, you must be pregnant. Or the worst part is you must have a problem with alcohol, because otherwise, why wouldn't you drink? There's a lot of reasons why I would want to drink. And that's why I would like to talk to people about this, because it's not, I have a problem with alcohol. It just changes biochemical reactions within my body that then causes me to have a problem with my health.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it can be looked at or perceived as like somebody having, oh, you're weak, you can't handle your alcohol, that type of vibe, that type of misconception in your circles among friends or family. I definitely get that. I think, yeah, it's good that we talk about it, because as nurses, we get stressed. We work, these high expectation jobs. And so alcohol can be a way that we use it as stress relief. And as we're getting into this topic, as we're, speaking about alcohol and things like that, I just want to let it be known. I just want to say this off the top. Like it's a no judgment zone. This is a free zone. Cheryl and I are discussing these topics because we've been there. We've seen the effects, and we just want to talk more about it and have an open space. So please drop your comments, your questions in the comments below. let us know your thoughts. It's an open space.
Absolutely. There is zero judgment because it is very much involved in a lot of our cultures. And, as a nurse, it would be, I have friends. Hey, let's get together at 8 in the morning after our night shift and have a glass of wine or have a beer or have a coffee drink, something because we're rewarding ourselves.
Mhm.
It's a reward system. It's embedded in our culture to relax with. So there is zero judgment. I loved my glasses of wine. I loved everything. What happened with me to get me to decide to eliminate it is I taught brain health and I realized how toxic alcohol was to the brain. And
Mm.
I brought my book out just so that I wouldn't misquote anybody. But with the brain, it's a fat organ. And so is most of our central nervous system of fatty cellular membranes. And they are made with omega-3 and omega-6 fats. And one of them, which is a really solid fat, is DHA. And
Mhm.
that is more of the structures of the brain, but it's also the structures of hormones. So when you drink alcohol, those fatty acids, which are the brain membranes, get replaced with a poorer substitute fat. Instead of DHA, it's called DPH, docosahexaenolenic acid. Like it's a long word, eh? You just if you did DPA, you could figure it out, But it's like I'm building lesser structures because
Mm.
of the alcohol. And and I was surprised that it wasn't very much that could actually make that. So as a component that we've been educated on as being great for stress, and then we have been educated on saying, have a glass of wine, have a beer, relax, put your feet up, you know, um,
Are you really helping yourself relax?
are you really helping yourself relax? Let's get into devolve into that. Let's stop, dive into it. And then when I started reading this, that well, if it's a lesser fat that goes the membrane on making my hormones or the brain structure, how does that help me deal with stress? Right?
Whoa, like what you're saying basically is the thing that we have gone to for our stress relief, for our coping mechanism. Like, I've had a long day. These patients are getting on my nerves. I feel crappy. I'm tired. I need to relax. Let me throw back a glass or two or whatever it is,
Three
your
or
drink of
four or
choice.
a
Yeah.
bottle of wine or whatever. No judgment, a 6 pack of beer. I've been there after a shift.
Yeah.
I get it. You know,
Yeah, and then so we're actually changing the structure of our cellular brain and
and
even some hormonal changes.
right. So every neurotransmitter is made with this DHA fat to make it acceptable. But what if we now have the DPA and it's not as great, not as that connection can't happen. So what connections are
Mm.
not happening as well are the sleep hormones are not being made. The cells aren't returning themselves around enough. But the liver is spending a lot of time trying to say, that's not my normal molecule that I recycle. What do I do with this? That is a sugar that does not show up in our fat blood sugar levels right away. That sugar shows up in our triglycerides, our liver fat, our fatty liver. So these are two different organs in ways that this type of sugar affects the body, and we need to be aware of it. And awareness helps you get to where you're supposed to be, like
Yeah.
when you know better, you're like, oh, okay.
This is where it's affecting me. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you said, it's even the sleep cycle, your sleep cycle. So I'd love to talk more about that. A lot of people use alcohol as a way to relax and for my generation, social anxiety. A lot of people, and we could talk about that in a minute as well, getting into groups, you think that's a way to be more relaxed or more just for anxiety. And then there's a group of people that also use it as a way to sleep. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Is it really true that alcohol helps you sleep, or does it just help you fall asleep faster, but do you really sleep, right? I've been reading a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to go deeper in it.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. So it's particularly, we think about when or if you go to the traditional Chinese clock, and the traditional Chinese clock is in the body, is the time that certain organs do different things in the middle of the night. So I'm talking nighttime sleep here, particularly where I've studied on it. So alcohol, like you said, helps you fall asleep quite quickly. For people, they'll, like, oh, I'll have a shot and then I'll go to sleep, or a couple beer and I just crash right away, But if you find yourself waking up between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning, that's when your liver is saying, oh, I got all this extra sugar I got to deal with right now. It's being really kind of toxic to the brain fat, to the central nervous system fats. I got to deal with this. And how do you know that that's happening? It's because I wake up, or I start tossing and turning, or maybe I start sweating, or maybe I start having these symptoms in the middle of the night, that are disrupting my sleep. That is the cause from the alcohol. So it may help you fall asleep, but it doesn't put you in that restful REM sleep. It doesn't put you in the recovery sleep. It doesn't put the organs where they need to be doing its stuff.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily give our body time to recover, to do this regenerative process. In fact, we're making the liver work harder. And you said like that's where the triglyceride level elevates. Can you give us a little bit more about how the alcohol in the liver, the response, the way it reacts to our body, and maybe, yeah, let's start with that.
It responds in the way that it has to start bundling up all this excess sugar and get it out of the blood system and out of it. So what it does is it starts gathering up all these glycerides, these types of sugars, specifically with alcohol, or higher levels of glucose if we're eating a lot of sugars, period. It's got to do something with it. So it starts storing it. These triglycerides, or these types of sugar, start getting stored in fat pockets around and throughout the liver itself. So it stores it differently than if you were storing it around your abdomen. It stores it within the liver organ. So then that makes the liver organ less effective. And when it's doing that, it's not doing the other things that the organ needs to do, and which the liver does. It breaks down your stress hormones so that they can be recirculated. They break down the acetylcholine, which helps put the memories into your brain. It's, for long-term and short-term memory. This is why sometimes after a night of drinking, maybe it's before you go to bed, you might not remember the last 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Your brain will go into its own regular routine, getting you to where you're going, and then not utilize that acetylcholine and put it in the right areas of the brain to manage everything. But using it as a stress coping mechanism, especially when we think of sleep and what the organs do during sleep time, when they don't have to do waking things like, filter blood, or, not filter blood, but I'm thinking the brain, where it has to get us to run, it has to get us to do all the kinds of stuff. While they're all sitting there being not utilized properly. I kind of lost my track there when I ran off there. So my apologies.
No, you're fine. But basically, the liver does so much, and when we over pack it with all this sugar, we definitely do some harm.
Right.
But we don't realize it right away. It takes some time. So, how can somebody, going back to the hobbies, how can somebody start recognizing, okay, this is a hobby, and now it's turning into more of a habit? What are some signs that we can know?
It is a very subtle sign before your body becomes dependent on it. And it becomes dependent on it to be for a lot of reasons because, we talk about how it's not a relaxer for stress, but in the same sense, it mimics and goes into the receptors for those neurotransmitters that help us deal with stress. So it's sort of like it does work, but it doesn't work after the second.
Mm.
You hear what I'm
You build
saying?
up a resistance. You build up like
Exactly.
tolerance.
Yeah, and then the other hormones get lazy, the other organs get lazy, they don't work the way they want to. So it's very difficult to decide when it's been a hobby to becoming a habit. So what I think, and this is again my opinion, is if you're looking at your days off and putting in recovery days, like, oh, it's okay, I don't have to do anything tomorrow, I can lie on the couch and just kind of catch up on Netflix with a hangover. Or it's okay, you start making deals like I'll just have a half a bottle of wine or something like that, it'll be okay and this will be good. But when you start ticking off your daytime things and say, do I got the wine? Or when you get home from your shift and you open up a bottle of wine before you start cooking dinner, that's when you realize now, maybe this is going to the next level. Maybe now, instead of doing something else first and putting that second, it's now become the first thing I do. So is it a habit?
Yeah, that can be hard to decipher. Like you said, it starts off subtle, right? It creeps in, it becomes part of, just sometimes on the weekends. Then it's like after every shift, and, I have to go to the liquor store. I've been there. I definitely know that feeling. I think the thing that made me become now, I still indulge, I still have my glass of wine, on the weekends, but I'm definitely not what I used to be going out and, feeling like alcohol was my way to with social anxiety. I wanted to be around people, but they made me nervous to be around them. And I felt like I could be a funner person. I could be a more talkative, be a better version of myself when I was under the influence. And so that always made me want to drink more. But then, like you said, then it was the hangovers. Then it was the day after. I didn't like the feeling afterwards. And so when I start thinking about those things, I'm like, okay, this is definitely going to stay just a hobby, like a sometiming special occasion, because that after effect, that is something that I really truly don't like. And I'd love if you talk a little bit more about like what happens in our body when we have hangovers and things like that. What is that? Like a sugar low
Well,
or
our body is trying to manage all those alcohol sugars, which are now I could find the word for it, so I'll have to put that up on there later. But it becomes a toxic substance to the brain. It becomes a lethally toxic substance to the blood, like to the organs. It becomes toxic, and that's your hangover. It's robbing us of the oxygen our body needs, because again, you're not picking up sufficient oxygen when you're in that kind of a slumber. It is from perhaps you ate the wrong food the night before, and maybe it is the amount of what you had to drink. Maybe it had other sulfurs in it. Maybe it had other toxic for your body substances that, when you've been impaired, exasperate the feeling as well.
That's so true.
Yeah. So maybe you didn't drink enough water and you became dehydrated. Maybe you peed out more than you did because you were having a couple glasses. And I don't know, at least when I drank beer, I liked a nice cold beer and didn't think anything of it of our heritage, but you go pee after quite a bit after the first beers. So, you're needing to replenish electrolytes. So you have an electrolyte imbalance. There's all these components that go along with it. And then, like you said, you get to that stage where it's like, oh, I don't have time for this. And that's why, I hit a certain age and I said, I just really don't have time for that. And I did a 28-day challenge to see, is this a hobby or is this a habit? And that's how I determined it, just like 28 days off my calendar. February is a great month to do it. 4 weeks, If I can do it without thinking about it and I can start filling in the gaps, then I'm okay. So,
Wow, that's
you know,
amazing.
so the hangover,
28 days.
28 days. Well, then 28 days went to 3 months, went to a year, went to 2 years, went to 3 years, went to 4 years, hitting the fifth year. And then something happened and I went out and had a couple of glasses of tequila, gave myself permission,
Yeah.
knew I had nothing coming up and forthright to do the next day, forgot. Yeah, I remember a hangover now. I remember the disruption of my digestive system, and it wasn't a lot to drink. It was just that my body got unused to the alcohol, loved, feeling like energetic every day. And then I got sluggish and my digestive system got sluggish for 5 days of
Wow.
recovery.
Yeah.
You don't realize putting something to sleep, like your colon, or it's not just you getting impaired. It's
Mm.
every cell, it's every organ in your body that's having that same effect. So
Yeah. Wow. That's so, like, the way you wrapped it up, just about every cell in your body. That's literally how you feel sometimes when you're in a hangover, y'all. For my birthday, I went out. It was in January, and I was drinking wine all day. Then I had a couple of glasses of wine at night, and I was done. The next morning, I felt it, and it literally felt like my whole body was just shutting down. I didn't have anything to do the next day, but it was not a place that I wanted to be. So I've been there. That's why I can talk about this. And it's so interesting to hear how it affects your body, how it's a really a toxic substance to your body. And it doesn't take much, Cheryl, right? So I was reading that, everybody's different, but it doesn't take much to be just like moderately impaired or to be impaired. So in your advice, what is like minimum, moderate, or maybe too much?
So definitely too much if you can't remember what you did, and again, there is no judgment. There is no judgment in any of this conversation because I did like to have the, glass of wine. It's very embedded in our culture. I had to learn how I wanted to look at how my body wanted to feel. And that's what I want you to be aware of. Trucks.
Sorry, I'm by the freeway.
No, that's great. Here in Canada, we have a truck thing going on anyway. But, but if you are feeling tipsy, I always say, that's how your cells are feeling. Okay. So if you feel a bit relaxed, but you don't feel tipsy, then your cells are not being damaged. It's when you get that tipsy feeling, your body then has to start figuring out how am I going to process this? And the
Oh, wow.
brain will only usually do up until that tipsy point of cleansing it self out. And it takes about an hour and a half to try to figure out how to do that. And then it takes another hour and a half to try to figure out how to do the second drink after that. And then everybody goes, well, I'm on a party mode and I'm just going to take the night off. And when I say everybody, I mean your liver, your pancreas, your immune system, your heart muscles, your leg muscles. Every cell in your body decides I'm just going to take a sit back and let you figure it out. So you are the only one who knows. And you're the only one who needs to have that conversation. But I always like to state, and this is coming from a disclosure statement, if you have been a heavy drinker, and again, no judgment, you'd need to know that coming off of alcohol cold turkey can put you in cardiac arrest. And that is when you know your body is truly dependent. And if you have the shakiness, you need to talk to a family doctor because there are medications that will help you, assist you so that you don't have a problem. And again, everybody is different. And, let's go. Do we have a minute to talk about the anxiety attack?
Yeah.
A lot of us do use anxiety for a social thing. And it has been touted as part of the socialization norm to go out there and look like you're having a great time. Even in my earlier days, I used to say to my friends, do you think we might have a problem with alcohol? And they're like, no, just keep on having fun with us. And I'm like, okay. Not that I was peered into it, but it becomes a very much part of our society, right? So we
Yes.
have to be, like, is it the anxiety? What is causing the anxiety? Is it sugar that I ate the day before? Am I celiac? Is it this? Is it that? Oh, if you hear my dogs in the background,
Yeah.
go outside. Someone just pulled up into the yard, but you can put me on mute for a second if you like to.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like the social anxiety part that we talked about, and it just being part of our social norm to go out, have a few drinks, relax, and look like you're having the best time of your life. It's just like, what are we doing this weekend? Where are we going to get some drinks? And if you do go to an event or anything, do they have a bar? Where are you going to find me at? I'm at the bar before I talk to anybody. Kind of like, it almost reminds me of like when we start talking about coffee. I can't talk to anybody until I have my coffee. And like you said, it just goes back to, okay, what is my body really telling me right now? Am I dealing with other things that are making me anxious? Am I feeling uncomfortable in this setting? Am I getting used to being new in this setting? Or maybe even I'm dealing with some chronic issues, like you said, celiac. Or maybe it was the food that I ate yesterday that is really making me anxious or giving me anxiety. But I think it's great that we start asking those questions when we start picking up these hobbies a little bit more and more. And like you said, it doesn't take much. We have to be the judge. I hear you. I see you. Yeah.
No, that's right. You nailed it right there because you know making yourself comfortable, understanding we forget that we're in charge of our bodies and we should know our bodies better than anybody else. And a big part of our body system is the central nervous system. It is the hormones, which are the messengers. The hormones make the neurotransmitters that then determine how we're feeling. So with us coming off a night shift, with us working stressful jobs, nurses have a stressful job. There's a lot goes on in the field and decisions have to be made at the key, like it's just at a drop of a hat. And I've gone on 12-hour shifts where it's been stressful. It's going to take me days of recovery. So I'm always living in a neurotransmitter or a calming GABA relaxed state deficit. So I need to
Mm.
start filling that boat up. But also, what I like to do is, hey, what are they serving that is non-alcoholic at that bar? What kind of drinks can I have? Are you familiar with kombucha?
Yes, I love kimchi. Yeah, yeah.
We actually have little kombucha bars in Vancouver where you go down and they have live music and they just have various types of kombucha on tap. Or
That's
Quebec,
awesome.
yeah, various ethnic fermented drinks with no alcohol in them, but just enough to give you that little bit of dopamine high and excitement of going out. So plan some things, make that kind of move towards it. But remember too, you got that tonic water or the club soda so that you don't make too sweet. Because still the liver needs to digest that sugar at nighttime, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that you brought up the part about as we are in charge of our bodies, and we can make those decisions. I think a big part of it, especially for someone that is like feels maybe disconnected from their body. I don't know if you've heard this, like people are always like, my body's against me, or I've heard people say this, or sometimes you just feel disconnected from your body. You just don't feel like you're yourself. Maybe you're just, like, why am I always so stressed? Why am I always so anxious? Why do I always struggle with this anxiety? So you kind of feel like you're battling against your emotions or your will or your body because it won't act right. We are in charge of our body. And the beautiful thing is, if you're feeling disconnected, it's time to rebuild that relationship again. How can we rebuild that relationship with our body, with our mind again, so that we feel confident, so that we feel that trust, that safety? And it takes consistency. It takes repetition. The things that you're doing daily, the things that you're saying to yourself daily, how you're treating yourself, and having the positive outlets, having other substitutes, like you were saying, the kombucha bars and having the club sodas and getting creative. You don't always have to just go with the tide, let's all go to happy hour, try
Yeah.
something different sometimes.
Yeah, there's a virtual playgrounds. When I quit, I used to smoke too because that was the way to get your coffee breaks for sure. Oh, I got to go out and have a cigarette because everybody wants out the door. But I'd be like, okay, where am I going to put that money instead of where I put it there? So when I did quit alcohol, and it was that once a week or twice a week only, where I would have some drinks. So. But within 1 year, I bought myself an e-bike within actually no time at all. In the money I
Saving
saved.
that money. That
Saving that
is
money,
so
I got
good.
an e-bike.
If that don't convince you, like, hey, maybe I could put this money into something better. Just like with going out to eat a lot. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes people, we get, like, hey, you get your paycheck and it's gone before you know it. And you're looking at your paycheck, you're looking at your statements. Where do I spend my money? Oh, at all these fast food places. That was me, definitely. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so
But
I mean, we've been there, right? So like, because again, it's a reward system. The alcohol is a reward system. So how do you reward yourself? So I went to concert tickets. I'm a science nut. I'm going to go to the city and have coffee with a friend, take the ferry over, spend a day doing something. Maybe I'm going to go to a spa instead. Maybe I'm going to reward myself on a date night. But another thing that people are not quite aware of is that if you're going through menopause or if you're changing through the life, that will give you night sweats. That will increase your symptoms, alcohol, tenfold. Like I could almost look at my coworkers and say, oh, did you have a couple glasses of wine last night, when they were hot flushing through their shift because they're still having to deal with the triglycerides, the sugars, sometime in their shift.
Oh, wow.
And so you would see it and they're like, yeah, I could almost, I love to watch people. So, it's like, this is what I noticed. This is what I noticed. And why did I notice it? Because I noticed it in myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then I could notice it with other people. And
Yeah.
that's why I love educating nurses, because when we start noticing how our bodies work correctly, we can help others recognize it,
That's so true. But first, it starts with us. First, it takes that step back. Like, okay, what am I? What do I have going on? And we want to help others. That's our passion. We want to give to others, and we want to help others live healthier, happier lives. That's what we got into nursing for.
That's
But
right.
with the lifestyle, with the nursing life, with the high stress levels, we began to develop habits and things, ways of living that may no longer serve us in this high stress level lifestyle. But I'm glad you brought up that menopause fact, because we did bring up, alcohol as being kind of like a depressant already. We kind of brought that up.
Yeah.
And then it also affects your hormone production as well. If you want to really quick, just maybe go back over that just a little bit more, and how it is a depressant and how it does affect the hormones.
The endocrine system is very, very complex, and yet it's very simple. And the reason it's simple is it's all intertwined. And as we age, we tend to produce less substances that make less hormones, that then, like progesterone and GABA. And then when you add the alcohol, that has already slowed down the central nervous system, and going back to DPA, which is the wrong fat, they're not as able to do their job. We're carrying more sugar. We're carrying more load on our livers, because already, oh my gosh, maybe we're estrogen dominant. And, you would know if you're estrogen dominant in the fact that maybe you're bigger breasted. But as you go through menopause, all of these hormones get recycled through the liver every day.
Mm-hmm.
not just during menopause, but more so. And then it has to deal with, what am I going to do with these hormones? And that's when the liver starts waking you up. And then you haven't dealt with the sugars because your pancreas is producing less insulin. And then you're under more stress because you're dealing with having to put out different types of sugars. And then you got these toxic substances, and your body's just going, I don't know what to do anymore. And I'm going through the change. And I'm already going through natural symptoms. And then you add stress. And stress hormones use our progesterone, and they use testosterone, okay? We're already deficit of progesterone going through menopause, but we're also deficit of testosterone, and we have more estrogen. So again, there's that out of balance of everything. And when you add a toxic substance, it can further damage those hormones that we need to sacredly hold on to, to get through. Like, I mean, I went through, because I decided to abstain from alcohol at that time when I went through menopause, I went through with zero symptoms.
Wow.
Which is highly unusual.
Yes. Definitely, we want to hear more about that for sure. So what I hear you saying, yes, we're going to save it for sure. But many people may want to contact you and things like that. But before we go on, just really quickly, that hormone, that whole neurotransmitter, the blocking, basically alcohol is it's creating those sugars or those fatty acids that aren't really adequate. And they block a lot of the neurotransmitters that signal the hormones that we need. So it's just like this whole intertwining system that you said. And basically, alcohol does more than get you tipsy, y'all. It affects your brain, it affects your organs. It's a sugar, and it's something that we should talk about, especially if you're struggling with it or feel like you're struggling with it. If you've heard some of the things that we're talking about, maybe it resonates with you. Cheryl, how can people that want to work with you or maybe hear more about how you're helping people wean off of alcohol and maybe choose other habits, how can we start to find out more?
I always get a hold of me at Cheryl M. Prince at hotmail.com. We will leave my link on a page here. Should I put it on here right now?
I can put it on there. I'll link it to the comments in the show notes.
Look for me at Growing Tree Wellness. And we are starting to embrace gardening and kids and going from the bottom up all the way to the top so that we can live our best lives, and get us to that point and not there. I'm always willing. I'm happy to do a 15-minute consult for free to just sit there and talk. And again, there is zero judgment because, I'm almost sure everybody I know has gone through this topic. It is embedded in our society, and it changes everybody's lives. So Cheryl M. Prince at hotmail.com or growingtreewellness.com.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Like, there has to be a part 3. I definitely want to hear more about your menopause journey. We need to have these conversations. We start, like you said, from young all the way to older. Like, we need to, talk about these topics because a lot of us aren't, used to having these open conversations. And when you start, getting away from those old habits that you've had, maybe you are starting to get away from that world of what you used to be. Now you get to open yourself up to different resources, different people that are out here living different lives and thriving. And it's always a pleasure to hear from somebody that has done that and that is doing that and that is helping others do the same. So I just want to say thank you for coming on, and we're definitely going to have you on again.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye.
Y'all, what an amazing time with Cheryl. She is such a wealth of knowledge. She is just always so giving, and she is so passionate about sugar-free. So if you heard anything tonight that resonates with you and you want to learn more about sugar-free, gut health, going plant-based, I'm your girl, especially for my nurses. I definitely want to give us more tools, more resources. So definitely connect with me, connect with Cheryl if you have more questions. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, please connect with me on my Facebook page, the Nurse Wellness Community, for more tips, more insights in my live community. I do a lot of these lives on that page in the Facebook community. I did want to give you a sneak peek of what you can expect in the Nurse Wellness Community. And another announcement, I did launch my podcast. You Glow Nurse podcast is going live. We're going worldwide with this message of healthier, wealthier nurses for our future, y'all. We deserve to be put first. Our health deserves to be put first. And I want to give you the tools. I want to give you the resources. And tonight's conversation was definitely an example of things to come in the You Glow Nurse podcast. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts. We're on Anchor and Spotify. Please leave a review, share with your friends. I'm so excited to have you on, and I want to just thank you all for sharing your Wellness Wednesday with us, and I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.